Hey, welcome to part 5 of the Human Comedy Guide series. Today we're at Deep Forest and we have a choice between either race or road cars. I've gone through quite a few cars, mostly Group 3, Group 4, but there's 2 cars that I've tried that absolutely break this mission. If you want to be done with this video real quick, your current best choice of car would be the SRT Tomahawk X. This may get patched at some point. I actually learned this from Mr. MCA's video, so if you want to learn how to do this setup properly, I'll link his video and channel in the description. But this is just the basics, and you've got to detune the power outputs. And you've got to get really finicky with the gear ratios. So if you want to learn how to do this properly, look at Mr. MCA's video. He walks you through how to set up the gear ratios to get this very low PP rating for this car to actually be eligible for this event. And once you've got this all set up, all you really have to do, throw the fuel map on lean as far as it can go and put the traction control all the way up just to save the tires a little bit, and you're on your way. I don't believe you even have to have a pit stop, and even if you do, you'll be miles and miles and miles ahead, so you have all the time in the world to fuel your car up. The next broken car of choice, I've kind of found this out on my own, is the 70s F1 car. If you follow what I've got here, the setup, this should be good enough, but again, all the magic happens in the gear ratios. I've done a pretty similar thing as to what was done with the Tomahawk X, so it's also pretty broken, and it may get patched at some point, because this just brings the PP rating right down enough for you to basically take part in any event with this car, or the Tomahawk as well. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through on how to set up the gear ratios for this car. I've got pretty much the setup exactly the same as I had it shown before, but now we're going to sort out the gear ratios. So things get quite messy here. So firstly, we're going to start off with the first and second gears, but we're going to take the first gear, push it all the way up to the max. So as you can see, the highest number we can bring it up to right now is 4.966, but as we bring the second gear all the way up, we'll let that go up and up and up. Now we can take the first gear even higher. So we're going to keep repeating this until we get to the values I showed before, which I will quickly bring up on screen so I can see them. Right, so we wanted to get to 11,000, we'll get close to those values that I showed you before, and then we'll adjust it from there. So you're just going to bring the number all the way to the max, then take it and bring it even further up each time until you get to those values that I showed you. And I can't seem to match those exact values I had, so we're just going to have to experiment, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do when I get there. Okay, so as you can see, we look at the PP rating, it's still not very low. We're still at 738. We need to bring it down to below 620, so there's still quite a lot to chop off, but we can fix that. So I've got the values as close. Okay, some of them have changed themselves, so I'm going to try rematch them, but I've got them close to what I had before, but it still isn't working. So I'm going to have to now experiment with them and try break it to get the PP to drop. Okay, so now we're basically identical to what I had before, but the PP's still way out. And this value right here, I can't get it to 31 because it keeps changing itself back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go for the first gear. I'm going to push it up to this number. We're going to refresh it. And straight away, just like that, we adjusted the first gear ratio a little higher. And bam, we're already into the PP limit. And at this point, I wouldn't touch anything. I think we're all good to go. Now with driving this car, all I suggest is just put the traction control up to max, just to help stop the rear wheels spinning too much, just save the rear wheels tires a little bit. And put the fuel map all the way to lean, as you do with both these overpowered cars. Just put it all the way to lean. There's plenty of power to carry you through the event. And I think this car will require one pit stop closer towards the end of the race, maybe around lap 33. I can't work out the exact maths right now, but you will have to add some fuel, and don't even bother changing your tires. You can if you want to, because you'll be miles ahead, but you don't need to. You just have to add some fuel. Again, they may end up patching something like this, so I'm also going to cover a more legitimate method today, which you can use if they do eventually patch this whole gear ratio broken method. So I found the best options to be to take some Group 3 cars and just detune them to be quick enough in this event while also being under the PP limit. They seem a little bit better than tuned Group 4 cars or any road cars that I've found so far. There's so many of them that I can't go through all of them. The best one I've found for this event so far is the Porsche 911 It's great on fuel. It's probably the best Group 3 on fuel that I've found so far. You will be able to go through an entire race without doing a pit stop with this car, as long as you're driving the car right with fuel map number 4, I think. So this is just a setup for that. I don't believe I even touched the gear ratios on this one. If I did, then here they are. And a couple other Group 3 cars that I want to mention is the V12 Vantage Aston Martin Group 3 and the Mustang Group 3 car. They're both pretty much identical on fuel, and they both do quick enough lap times. I'm going to do the race with the Aston Martin to see if we can do the entire race without a single pit stop. I also found the Atenza down here, the Group 4 car, to be quite quick, but it's not very great on fuel, and you will have to do at least one pit stop. Out of the cars that I have suggested, here is the order of how good they are. The Tomahawk X is going to take the win by miles, and the F170s car is also going to be super competitive. It's going to be way quicker than this Group 3 car. However, you will need to throw a pit stop in there towards the end and add a bit of fuel. The 911 GT3 is probably the best on fuel that I've found, and both the Aston and the Mustang Group 3 are about the same in terms of fuel usage, and their pace is also pretty good. So for my car of choice today, here is the setup for the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. I don't think I touched the gear ratios on this one. I tried to keep it as legit as possible, so this shouldn't be patched out. You should be able to use this at all times. I'm also going to show a couple things I use to help bring the PP rating down a bit on these cars. So the first thing I like to do is bring the front ride height up a little bit closer towards the rear. As you can see, that already dropped the PP rating by almost 10. I experiment a little bit with the anti-roll bars. Usually when you put the front roll bar up, decreases it a bit, and same if you take the rear anti-roll bar down. Doesn't make a huge difference, but might be worth doing if you're just balancing on the edge of the PP limit. With the spring rates, often pushing up the front stiffness will decrease the PP rating, like it did there, 28, and if I go all the way even further, just be aware doing these things will have an effect on the performance of the car. So if the car becomes incredibly hard to drive, then you might have to take things back a bit and readjust. Another thing that makes quite a big difference to the PP rating is changing the camber rating. So on the front camber, if I take this all the way up to 5, it's going to drop the PP rating by like another 10 or more. If we keep pumping it up, it's going to keep doing the same thing, but if you go too far, the car might handle a bit strange and kill the front tires a bit, so I don't want to go too extreme. Once you've taken the front camber up, I don't think the rear makes a big difference. No, it doesn't, so I'm just going to leave that down there. And then the same thing for the toe values. Usually the front toe, if you push this all the way up or close, just somewhere, let's put it at 85 for now, that brings it down about 4. It's not a huge amount, so maybe not worth it. And if we try in the rear, if we take that all the way to the right, how much of a difference is that going to make? About the same. So on this car, it doesn't make a massive difference, but on some cars it has more of an effect than others. Again, be aware that if you make these values so extreme, it may have a bit of a weird impact on the performance of the car. And another thing is, if you put ballast on the car for whatever reason, so if we just throw 120, that's going to drop the PP rating by 6, and if we push all of that weight to the front of the car, that's going to drop it even further by almost 10, and that, what it does, it will make the car more stable but a bit more understeery as well. Obviously with the ballast on the car, it's going to be a bit heavier and maybe a little less fuel efficient, so I try avoid adding the extra weight if I can. But this is what I have for this car for this race. Now with all of that out the way, we can get onto the race. So I'm going to start off with fuel map on number 3, traction control on number 1. I'm going to leave the brake bias for now. I may adjust that towards the rear if the car's a little bit understeery. But we're going to start with fuel map number 3. Now, one thing I need to point out pretty soon is that, okay, firstly you're going to get through most of the cars quite quickly, then you'll get up to about 4th position. 2nd and 3rd are quite quick, and I tend to catch them, I think lap 2, maybe towards lap 3. And then the leader, he is so quick and he'll pull miles ahead, and he's actually difficult to catch, if not impossible to catch. But the thing with that guy is he's running a medium race tires, and he pits quite early. He pits around lap 10, and with us, we are aiming to not even have a pit stop in this race. Excuse my horrible driving right now, but you kind of have to drive like that to get through as quickly as you can at the start. You just got to be very pushy, get through the AI, be aware that they will drive straight through you because they tend to drive as if you're not even there, but to be honest, we're doing the same thing. Yeah, so we're aiming to not have a single pit stop, and by doing that, we're going to pull miles ahead of everybody in time. So be patient, get yourself up to around 2nd by lap 3-ish. I think that's a comfortable place to be, and then just be patient from then on and wait until the guy at the front pits. Now, I worked out the fuel target to be around 2.6% in fuel per lap. If you're running a bit more than that, then you're probably going to have to take a pit stop towards the end of the race to top up the car, otherwise you won't make it. It's quite difficult to calculate that because you don't get a decimal point by the fuel percentage on the bottom right there, but you can kind of work it out as the number ticks down. And I did work out this car to be somewhere around that target. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try catch up to second position here, and once I get past him, I think I'm going to put the fuel map on number 4, and we'll just be patient and wait for the leader to pit. I'll put on fuel map 4, however the car will, since we're on a straight, he's probably going to tear back past me again. You can play it a bit cheeky if you have a mirror, because I can't see anything behind me right now. You could probably block him on the straight to stop him from coming back past you, but he should have a bit more top speed than you, so just be aware you might come flying back past. But once you get to the corners, you'll tear back through again because you've got way more cornering performance than they do. Okay, so I'm going to try go through a bit of a lap guide here. The guy behind is catching me, so he might ruin my first turn. But basically, you want to pit as the track dips down here after the 100 board. Shifting down to second, bit of trail braking, reach the apex. The AI is pushing me out the way, the naughty boy. Accelerate about halfway through, we should get past him, he's still next to me. We want to make the apex there, but the AI is in my way right here. Left here, you can use a bit of the grass, use all that curb, and then you can cut a little bit over these anti-cut strips here. Make this apex here, coast through here, and then get on the throttle, use all the track here on the curb. A little bit of trail braking, a little bit of coasting. Once you can see the tunnel, you can begin to accelerate again. Don't go too close to that wall there, because I found myself getting penalties if you get too close to that wall. Brake in the middle of this little space between the corner there. Hug the inside line all the way to the outside. In the middle of the bridge, we're going to brake, come down to second gear. You can probably actually brake a tiny bit later than I did here. You can use all of this runoff here. You don't get a penalty for going out there. And now we just get a moment to breathe as we approach the hairpin of the track. Now for the hairpin, we're going to be looking out for a curb on the right. We want to brake just after that starts, I think. We'll see that in a moment. Up to 6th gear. Here we go. We're going to brake just after the curb starts. Down to 1st gear, and I can't really see the inside, but that was perfectly fine. Using a bit of the off-road on the exit, and yeah, that's a lap at Deep Forest on this particular event. It's not too difficult to drive. This Aston Martin's actually really nice to drive. It's one of the nicer options in terms of Group 3 cars and its stability. It's a good, well-rounded car. It's good on its fuel, it's got good pace, and it's just nice to drive. So with this current fuel map, I'm doing around 1 minute 35, 1 minute 36 lap times. I have gotten into the 34s, but that was on a faster fuel map. So if you can do this sort of pace, or even a couple seconds slower, you should be okay. Right now, if you look at the gap between me and P1, it's currently a 12-second gap, but we've just gone through all the straights where he has the advantage. He's got a real quick car in a straight line. But now we've got to go through all the twisty turns and everything. Watch how much we'll catch by the end of the turn section of the track. Okay, so we've just come out the final turn of that sector, and we're less than 9 seconds now. So there's quite a difference. As you can see, all our advantages in the turns. And like I mentioned before, don't worry about that guy for now. If he's around 10 seconds ahead, even 20 seconds ahead, I'd say that's probably about right, because he will pit in a few laps time. Just a wee reminder with the AI, for now make sure you're not running on the easy AI difficulty setting or even the normal setting, because the AI on those settings are currently broken. They run stupidly fast lap times that no human can keep up with, so just run on the hard difficulty for now. Hopefully they'll fix it soon, because right now I'm running on hard, and while for all the races I've done so far in this series I've been running on hard, and I haven't had such issues with the AI cars running unrealistic lap times. And on top of that, if you are having issues with some cars pulling miles and miles ahead in these races, even on hard, I'd suggest just to restart the session and try again, because every time you do these races, the AI behave differently. Sometimes I'll be faster and sometimes slower, so that's just another thing to try if you're struggling with AI. Coming onto the back straight again, I'm actually gaining on the car in front, now 7 seconds behind. Okay, so we're at the end of lap 9 now, and we've just seen the leader go into the pits. So looking at them, they had medium tyres on, so their tyres would have worn quicker, and that's actually a taken. So it's an electric car, they're at 0, so they're going to have to spend some time charging their car up. It'll take quite a while, so they'll drop back a few positions, and I don't think we'll have to deal with them for quite a while, maybe not have to even deal with them again in this race. Now at this point, once you're in the lead, if you're comfortably leading and you're faster than the next car behind you, I would highly suggest to just pop your fuel map even leaner, so go to even maybe 5 or 6 if you can keep a faster car than the one behind you, because by doing that you'll only increase your chances of completing this race without even doing a pit stop. But for this video I'm just going to keep it on fuel map number 4 just to see how far we can actually go with it. because I'm convinced that we should be able to make the entire race on fuel map number 4. If you're using the Tomahawk X, you'll be doing sub 1 minute 10 lap times, and that thing is so hard to get the most out of it, but even when you're just cruising around, you'll go so much faster than any other car you could drive on this track. And if you're using the 70s F1 car, you'll be doing around 1 minute 24s on good laps. I think that's what I was doing, something around that. So it's basically a whole 10 seconds quicker than these Group 3 cars. Now for a couple other things I want to point out. So for cutting the track, this turn right here, you can cut a bit of the grass here, but don't cut too much. And same with the anti-cut strips here, you can cut a bit over here, but don't cut too much because you'll end up giving yourself penalties. You don't want to give yourself penalties because that's just time that you needlessly need to throw away. And while I was talking just then, the guy that was in second place has just gone into the pits. So we currently have a 25-second lead over the next car with 38 minutes to go. Something to look for to know if you are on track for completing this race is, so there's a 1 hour in this race, right? And you can see the time remaining on the bottom right there. At 30 minutes to go, you should have more than 50% of your fuel remaining. If you have more than 50% of your fuel remaining, then you are on track to completing this race without a single pit stop. With 30 minutes and 30 seconds to go, if you look on the left, that guy that's just entered the pits, the one in 5th that's just dropping down, that's that Porsche Taycan again, that electric car. So they just keep having to pit over and over because they keep running out of charge over and over, and they're using the medium tyres as well. So that car you shouldn't have to worry about for the rest of this race. And now we have 30 minutes to go, so we're halfway through the race, and if we have a look at the fuel, I have 51% remaining, so we are on target to completing this race without a single pit stop. Only just. So if at this point, when you reach the 30-minute mark, you have less than 50% fuel, if you're like 49% or 48%, or just like just below 50%, you can probably recover that by just running a more lean fuel map and shifting early when you upshift. Like don't use all the rev range, just shift a bit earlier, and also lift off of the throttle earlier into turns. Like here I lifted quite early, brake a tiny bit later. Things like that can help save a little bit of extra fuel. You can do that to help recover that extra fuel that you've burned so that you can make the race without pitting in. We're now at 29 minutes to go, and all the 3 guys behind me are now entering the pits, so they're going to drop even further behind. We're just going to keep increasing our gap further and further. It's looking like it's going to be another dominant victory here. And yeah, if your fuel is something ridiculous like 40% or less, once you reach 30 minutes to go, either you've run too rich of a fuel map or your car just isn't that great on fuel. Some of the Group 3 cars are super fuel efficient, like this one, and especially that Porsche 911. That's the best one. If you want to do this race without worries on pit stop, use that one. I just thought I'd use this car that's also fuel efficient, but just not as much as that one, just to try something a little different. And it's working very well. So there are a few cars that you can choose from. Even the Group 3 Mustang would be a good choice. But every Group 4 car that I've tried so far is just not good enough to run a race without a pit stop. They all use too much fuel, and same with quite a few other Group 3 cars and all the other road cars that I've tried so far. Starting the final lap, we are over a lap ahead of the next driver. If we look over to the left there, that poor Porsche Taycan guy back in the pits on the final lap to get some extra charge for his vehicle. So yeah, that guy never had a chance at this. He was quick, he was very quick, but he just doesn't last very long. I've kept the fuel map on 4. We still have 4% left of fuel, a lap and a half worth of fuel. Miles ahead, and the end of all that, we came away with that quite safely. And that's another win. We've got 1.3 laps of fuel remaining, so we pretty much got the fuel thing perfect. Fuel map number 4 got me to the end without a single pit stop. The tyres lasted perfectly fine. My lap times are pretty consistent right throughout the race. Only in the last 10 laps or so did I drop about half a second off my regular pace. And here we go with the final results. So in the end of all that, I was probably about a lap and a half ahead of the next car behind me. So if you're using this car or any of the cars I suggested today, you should have absolutely no troubles with winning the race if you learn the circuit and make sure your lap times are good. My lap times were around 1 minute 35, so if you can be within a few seconds per lap on that time, then you should be fine. As you can see down there in 8th, that guy that was tearing off at the start had absolutely no chance. He just kept running out of charge and dropped all the way 2 laps behind in the end of all that. And even that Alpine that was in second place right at the start, he finished in 10th, even further behind. The AI that finished on top of all that was the one in the McLaren, which was third place at the start, so he's the one you have to look out for. Just before I end off, I'm going to quickly show you a couple clips of me driving first the Tomahawk X and then the F170's car, just to show how crazy they are, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now for the Tomahawk X, just throw that on lean and put the traction control right up. Just look how crazy this thing is. We're going to get first place probably by the first turn. One thing I would recommend is just to keep it in 7th gear, because remember how messed up the gear ratios are, and also on the tight turns you're not going to have as much grip because the downforce isn't there. So as we pick up speed we'll have more grip, and we're already in first position just after the first turn. But yeah, this thing is absolute insane levels of grip, it's crazy. And yeah, you're going to end up cutting corners plenty of times with this thing, so just be prepared, you're going to get penalties, and big ones too. And just like that, we're going to do a somewhat decent kind of sloppy lap of this track in the Tomahawk X with 1 minute and 7 seconds, so it's just going to kick everything out of the park. Yeah, and just be aware that to get this thing to turn fast, you actually have to be carrying speed, so this turn, you have to slow down quite a bit for, because when you are slow, you have very little grip. So you have to slow down a lot for that one, just to make sure you get around there, and same for the hairpin. When you're not carrying speed, you don't have tons of grip. It's only when you're going as fast where the downforce actually does something. And now for the 70s F1 car, traction control all the way up, all the way to lean, and we're going to put it, just leave it in 5th gear. Same with the Tomahawk, we're just going to run in max gear the whole race, because when you start using other gears, remember they're all messed up because of the gear ratio thing, and you use a little bit more fuel when you use the lower gears as well. So this one is nowhere near as OP as the Tomahawk X was, but it's still a lot more competitive than any of the other cars. Remember, with the Tomahawk X we got to first place just after the first turn. With this car we get to first place towards the end of the middle of the back straight. It's a little bit slower, but way quicker than the Group 3s. And I feel like you can probably do this glitch, or whatever this is, with a whole bunch of the other super high powered cars as well and get away with it. So feel free to experiment. Now this was not a great lap, I went wide in quite a few corners, but as you can see the laps are still really quick in this car as well. So yeah, this race was also another fairly straightforward one, no weather changes, just a nice dry race to deal with the whole way through. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of GT3 cars that can't do this race without having to do a pit stop. They should all be fast enough, you'll just have to do pit stops. But there are some that will be fine without a pit stop, like this one, the Group 3 Mustang, and especially that Porsche 911. That one seems to be the best on fuel usage. There's probably other ones that I haven't found yet as well, I didn't go through all of them. But yeah, those are the ones that I suggest out of the ones I've tried. Just be sensible, spend some time learning the track and getting your lap times down, and you should be okay. Again, make sure to check out SimRace247 if you want to keep up with latest sim racing news, updates and more. I hope this helped you. As always, make sure to leave comments if you have any of your own tips, and I'll catch you guys in the next part.